Spokane Valley could become a sanctuary city of a different
Councilman
kind.
Caleb Collier says that this
I'm proposing that the city of Spokane Valley issue a proclamation stating that our city is a Second Amendment sanctuary city.
Welcome to the fire.
Today on Church and State, Mike Maat for Vice President. Hello, Christian Patriots, and welcome to Church and State, where we drive morality and religion over tolerance and apathy. And I'm your host, Caleb Collier, once again, your favorite far-right shock jock, and the show that talks about politics and religion. Jesus Christ is our referee, so it's always nice and clean. Real quick, point you to the website, churchandstate.media. Fill out this form for us. Number one, get our newsletter. We can bypass censorship. And also, I personally call every single one of you who fills this out, so please do so. Also, check out our most recent episodes, continuing to hit some really interesting conversations, ones that perhaps people aren't having on other platforms. Also, peruse through the amazing guests that have joined us over the years. You can see that, those featured guests. One of my favorites, obviously, Dr. Ron Paul. But we've been joined in the 10 years that I've been doing this by a number of who's who's. And if you click on the name, it'll take you right to the interview. Also, check out the great affiliates that we have. We partner with a number of companies that I personally shop with. Check every one of those out and use that promo code, Church and State. Many of them you'll get a discount, but regardless, you'll always be supporting us. And so, and speaking of support there, hit that donate button for us. Look, being part of NRBTV, Prepper Broadcasting Network, Faith and Freedom TV, your newscasters going to be nationally syndicated mid-August. Like, that takes money, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of money. And so if you like the conversations that we have, the guests that are part of the show, please consider donating. Even something like $10 a month can help us keep the lights on. Lastly, if you want to get a hold of us, churchandstate1776 at proton.me. With that, let's go ahead and bring on our guest. I'm so excited to bring in Mike Maat. He's running for Vice President of the United States of America. It's probably unheard of, but he's an economist, an entrepreneur, a former police officer, worked at the White House Office of Management and Budget from 1989 to 1991 during the original Bush administration, and has done re-election campaigns, communication staff to Bush Quayle 92. This guy has been in the thick of it for a long time, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show, sir.
Oh my goodness, the pleasure is absolutely mine. It's good to see you. Good to see you at Freedom Fest. You and I were just chatting about it. I'm glad that you had a good experience there, and so did I, for a variety of reasons, including bumping into smart people like you, and now it's just great to be able to follow up with you and join you today.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure getting connected with you at Freedom Fest. And we had a little faux pas. The microphones that I had ended up losing power, so we weren't able to do the interview. But I'm so pleased to bring you on the show and discuss your campaign here, your history. I mean, you're part of the Republican Liberty Caucus, and you and I were talking about this offline. I call that the true Republicans. Like the real Republican Party, the one that I was proud to be a part of for a while. You know, I'm more on the libertarian side of things, but the libertarians in the Republican Liberty Caucus, they're brothers in arms.
They are absolutely brothers in arms. Indeed, I was just talking to a couple of buddies, one a libertarian, registered Libertarian Party member, and a member of the Republican Liberty Caucus, and we came to the conclusion that philosophically, there's just not much daylight there. The difference is really one of practicality. You know, do you think that you can move the Libertarian Party and use and leverage and enjoy the Libertarian Party in a way that's going to make a big difference? Or is your cup of tea the way that politics work in the two-party system, and you believe you ought to be in the Republican Party? Leveraging those resources, taking advantage of everything that a big party has to offer. The Republican Liberty Caucus, of course, is an old caucus. Ron Paul was one of the chairs way back in the day, so very fun to see his picture. I'll be clicking that, by the way. You said if we click on those, we can go right to the interview. I'm going to be clicking on that. And I know that it's part of my job to go back and check your website after we do this today to make sure that I can click through to my own, but I may find it more interesting to click on Ron Paul's interview and listen to that instead.
I mean, he is kind of the godfather of liberty, right? I joke about this, but I had a little bit of a Wayne's World moment when he came on the screen. I was like, "We're not worthy," But yeah, I mean,
There is definitely that feeling, isn't there?
there is a little bit, but I'm so glad that you brought him up because this is kind of the debate within the constitutionalists, the libertarians, the liberty-oriented Republicans of how do you best take back this country. And so when we look at it, yes, this is a two-party system. And we look at heroes like Ron Paul, who was a Republican. We look at people like Thomas Massey, who is a Republican. But they're in the system, they're fighting it, and that's what you're doing with the Republican Liberty Caucus.
And folks are fighting them too, right? So it's a complicated situation. I'm glad. I'm heartened to hear the way that you structure that question as well. Ron Paul was one of those guys who had to decide back in the 90s when helping launch the Republican Liberty Caucus. They had to decide, do we join the Libertarian Party? Do we try to move the Republican Party? They obviously came to the conclusion that they wanted to work inside the Republican Party, and I've made that decision as well. But it's a tricky decision. It's a tricky decision. Obviously, the Republican Party has gotten away from, at least parts of the Republican Party have gotten away from what we used to consider, when I was in the Republican Party in the 90s, working so hard for the presidential campaigns back in the day, we considered the basics fiscal conservatism and adherence to the Constitution and support for free markets. And we've gotten away from some of those things. I wouldn't argue relative to the Democratic Party, right, which is on another planet, I think, from mainstream traditional American political thought. But we have gotten away from some of the basics, and I think the Republican Party is coming back in our direction. I think it has to. There will be a little bit of a backlash from the direction that it's been going. I also think that as far as demographics go, youngsters coming into the Republican Party are not having some of the old-fashioned lack of transparency, some of the slightly what I might even call authoritarian streak that we see in certain institutions. The youngsters aren't going to put up with that, right? Whether you call it libertarianism or you call it anything else, the youngsters want to see us get away from anything that smells like big government, governmental intervention in our cultural and private lives or in our economy, right? So I think that the direction necessarily has to be that. I also enjoyed the way that you couched the question because you said, you put it in terms that were bigger than just the Republican Party, right? This is an America-wide challenge, an America-wide issue. And I'm not typically given to trying to be overly melodramatic, but let me say, I think it's actually slightly bigger than that. I think that the debate that's going to matter in the United States and in no small part in the world, the political debate that's going to matter is this one. Are we going to continue to move away from traditional libertarian American political values, or are we going to move, toward or away? And I think that where that debate is going to matter is going to be inside the United States, and I think it's going to be inside of the Republican Party, and it's going to take the form of how do we want our party to look and feel as President Trump leaves office, right? President Trump leaving office is a big deal. Obviously, any president leaving office is a big deal, but I think most of us recognize that him leaving office is a bigger deal than most presidents leaving office, right? When, I don't want to name names, but there have been other presidents that left office and it wasn't as big a deal. Let's leave it at that. But when President Trump leaves office, the Republican Party needs to decide what his true legacy is. And that is going to drive a philosophical debate in the United States. I wish the Democratic Party were healthier and up to making a contribution to that debate. I don't think it is. I think the Democrats are not even to the starting line in terms of figuring out what they've been doing wrong and engaging the American public in a productive way. That's a disappointment to me. They don't listen to my advice, obviously, but
No,
I
clearly
hope
they
they
wouldn't.
get healthier soon.
Yeah, I like how you framed this, though, because, within the two-party system in the United States, you're right. On the Republican side of things, we can have either the more authoritarian approach, which you are absolutely correct. The younger generation has headed up to here. They're pretty angry about that side. Or we can move more towards that liberty side. And I don't care. I hate the arguments. I think in the proper form, like drinking some whiskey and having a cigar around a campfire, talking about the nuances of libertarianism is fun. But when we get down to it, when we get down to the political beast, identifying that, hey, if you're a constitutionalist, if you're a libertarian, if you're a Republican Liberty Caucus member, you're on the same team, guys. Stop kneecapping each other. But that's the argument on the Republican side. On the Democrat side, now we have the old guard. You can't even call them blue dogs. There's no such thing as a blue dog. You might as well search for a unicorn anymore.
No, and we miss them.
We do miss them. Yeah, I agree.
We miss them.
But you got the old guard of the Democrats versus these Democrat socialists. I don't know why they add the word Democrat in front of it. They're just socialists. But that's the argument on their side. On our side, it's the liberty question.
Yep. I think that's a weird thing. I think that that's true. I'm hopeful. By the way, I make a lot of bad predictions. Okay, so take everything I say. No one run out to the stock market based on anything in what Mike says today. But I'm hopeful that this socialistic movement in the Democratic Party is not going to turn into a big deal. Obviously, we'll see. But I'm hopeful that it's just in a few spots here and there. What worries me more fundamentally about the Democratic Party is that the way they see the world, and by they I mean the bulk of the party, not the ones that call themselves socialists, is sufficiently socialistic as to provide a big problem. Because there are two fundamental, as an economist, this is kind of, how I see the world sometimes. There are two fundamentally different ways of seeing the world. One is a modern, by modern I mean post-enlightenment, like the last 250 years, okay? Modern way to see the world, which is to recognize there is such a thing as economic growth, and it comes from cooperation, and it comes from free exchange. It comes from markets, right? And you get wealthy by adding value in the world and creatively figuring out how to do that, and you're compensated for it. In a perfect world, obviously, no economy works perfectly, but that's sort of the basis. And I get the impression that too many Democrats, and by too many I mean most, and that's a shame, see the world very differently in a pre-Enlightenment, pre-1776, pre-Adam Smith way of looking at it, which is to say the world is a zero-sum game, and the way you get ahead in life is by punching someone in the nose and taking their stuff. And that's the way I think most humans viewed the world for tens of thousands of years until 1776. And when the Democratic Party stops viewing people in groups in terms of we need to help this group get ahead and not fall behind, we need that group to take something from this group, all the redistribution silliness and all the woke idealism silliness, you've got to leave that behind before you're to the starting line in engaging in a philosophical debate based on basic traditional American mainstream political philosophy, and they're not there. They're stuck in what I would view as an inaccurate way to see the world. And that's what worries me. Not that these idiots who describe themselves as socialists, right, but that the mainstream Democrats are going to have to go through a replacement over the next generation.
Yeah, I think they're in a kind of in a rock and a hard place is where they find themselves, because they pushed their base into the accepting these what we would call abhorrent ideas, mutilating children, for example. That's an issue that none of us, regardless of political affiliation, should ever encourage, ever see as a virtue within our society. But they pushed that so far that now they're being dragged. If they want to remain in power and not be replaced by, the up-and-comings, the AOCs or whatnot, then they have to at least give the platitudes, the talking points to their base.
Yeah. Well, that is an interesting point. Politically speaking, they are in a tough spot. This is why in most political groups, political parties' development, it takes replacing people rather than changing the minds of your leaders, right? To your point, the leadership of the Democratic Party, just like any party, any group, it's very difficult to change their minds about anything. They represent a certain set of ideas and ideals, and you're going to have to replace a lot of people. That's one of the reasons why it takes such a long time. Right?
Sure.
It's funny you picked out, funny is the wrong word. It's interesting. Good for you for picking out the trans issue for the kids, for example. The one reason to be optimistic that we're going to be able to quickly outlast that issue, and it's hard to say optimistic because to the extent to which it lasts one more hour, that's a problem. Right, one more kid, that's a problem. But the one reason I would be optimistic that it's not going to last too much longer is the speed with which it came upon us. This is not something we discussed back in the 90s. Trust me on this one, right? I did not see this one coming. Right?
You probably would have been put in a mental hospital, honestly, if you would have been talking about this in the 90s.
Or on stage. I think people would have thought you were kidding, right? You would be considered a comedian. Have you, again, I'm going to be careful not to name names here in my own family, but have you tried to, I don't know what you were, I was born in 1961, right? Have you tried to explain these issues to people a generation or two ahead of you? Like folks that were born in the 30s or folks who were born in the 40s? I've had the recent experience, I don't mean like 10 years ago, I've had the recent experience of explaining this to my parents' generation. And even though they've been watching it on TV, they still can't figure it out. Like, it can't possibly be the way it's described, right? It can't possibly. So I have to explain, no, yeah, that's what they support. And when the debate is whether or not parents should be informed,
yeah,
you've gone too far, right? I don't care how libertarian you are. As we say, libertarians don't expect much from their government, right? It's somewhere between zero and not much, whether you're an anarchist or just a libertarian. But the one thing that we do want from our government is help keeping our families safe. Right? If you're gonna try to get on the good side of this libertarian, the one thing you can do is help me try to keep my kids safe. Right? That's not setting the bar too high. That's the one thing I would ask you to do. Right? Whether that's keep me safe from people dropping bombs on my family's house, or not getting in my way of keeping my kids safe myself. My kids are obviously old and grown, right? But it's not easy keeping your kids safe these days. If the government's going to do anything to win the hearts and minds of libertarians, that's it. Just help us keep safe. Don't hide things from us when weird stuff is going on at the public school.
Yeah, we don't want the indoctrination. Obviously, this is something that is key for really any lover of liberty. Is we shouldn't expect our kids to be indoctrinated. And I hate the public school system. That's a whole different subject for maybe a different time. But I want to ask you.
We need 3 hours on that someday, or maybe we could just say it's got to work its way out.
Yeah.
We need to replace it. It's going to take a while, but we need to gently replace it over time.
I fully on board. I applaud that one. Absolutely. That can be a campaign stumping point right there. But and speaking of campaigns, let me ask you about this, because nobody runs for vice president of the United States of America. You know, that is,
No.
I love this. I absolutely adore this because, you know, I mean, going back in our history, it used to be, you know, the person who lost was now the vice president. I can't imagine a world where Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are president and vice president. That'd be pretty wild, actually.
But in fairness to you, it was hard for you to imagine Kamala Harris being vice president in the first place.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know who had the better word salad, her or Biden. It's pretty wild. You could have some fun.
They were cooking together, so
Yeah,
that's why the salad
that's
was
the
so
truth.
rich.
Yes, but you know, now, you know, as we're transitioning, you know, or we're going to transition out of Trump, and you know, there's you know, the tech boys, they seem to really like J.D. Vance. The establishment seems to really like Marco Rubio. The more libertarian side wants Massey. You know, and I would definitely vote that direction personally. But, you know, typically you see them all up on stage, and then one of those people is going to get picked to be the vice president. It seems like this has become the way politics works in America. You're going completely in opposite direction, and you're running for vice president.
Well, that's true. And when the vice president gets picked who is not someone who ran for president, as it also frequently is, we need to remember the way that we pick vice presidents in this country is really stupid. We wait until a few days to go before the national convention, whatever party, Republican Party, Democratic Party, or at best a few weeks before, and whoever is going to be the presidential nominee by virtue of winning the primaries, whoever that person is, just unilaterally decides who the vice presidential nominee is going to be. And no matter whom they pick, no matter how dumb an idea, right? Everyone in the party is expected to say, "Wow, that's genius. That's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that." But you know, gee, Barack, Joe Biden really is a good idea. Gee, Joe, Kamala Harris really is. I didn't think of that. You're so smart. You're a genius. Back in my day, in 1988, George Herbert Walker Bush just wakes up one Saturday morning and decides it's Dan Quayle, shocking everyone in the world. By the way, also shocking Senator Quayle. And no process, right? No public vetting. Everyone near Bush was shocked. It's just unilateral. It's just whatever comes out of his head. And we all have weird examples of how this process goes, right? George W. Bush assigned Dick Cheney and a team to figure out who it ought to be, and Cheney picked himself. I'm not sure that's a perfect plan.
He may have been holding a shotgun to everybody else. Yeah.
Or just firing it, right? Cheney wasn't the guy who merely held the shotgun as a threat. He knew how to use it, or at least knew how to not know how to use it. So we have these examples. Some of these people, I'm big fans. But having said that, you don't always get the A team. Maybe we could just leave it. I don't want to name names, but you don't always get the A team when you leave the decision to just one person, right? And it's made for weird reasons. And so the idea that we're pushing is for the national delegates, the delegates at the National Convention in the summer of 2028, which is going to be in Houston, by the way, to take matters into their own hands and pick the vice presidential nominee. Importantly, they already legally do so. They're already legally required to do so. But the way that this works is the chairman goes to the stage, goes to the podium, goes to the microphone and says, "Everybody in favor of Sarah Palin say aye." And everyone, "Oh yeah, it's a genius. I can't, John McCain was genius thinking of it. We never thought of it, but that's absolutely the best idea in the world. We all vote aye. All in favor? Aye. All opposed. Kayla, I gotta say, I don't know what happens to you if you vote no. I think you fall through a hole in the floor of the convention hall, right? Something bad would, I don't advise it. I would like to see it. I would like to see what happens if you vote no. It's not really a legitimate democratic representative process. It doesn't reflect the entire party. I mean, you can't perfectly represent the entire party, but it doesn't even it doesn't even try, right? So we'd like to see this process go to a two-step process. We would like it to be a two-step process. The first step is to think, and the second step is to vote. So we're asking people, think, then vote, instead of just skipping the think part and going straight to the vote.
Yeah,
And
I love this idea. I got to tell you, I love it, because there's a number of elements that are going into this. And number one, there's a bit of comedic value, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful whatsoever, but the fact that nobody has ever ran for vice president, and here you are, boom, I'm doing it. People are like, wait, is this a skit? Is this for comedy? Like, but no, it's seriousness, and you're right.
Of course, it's very serious.
Absolutely,
because the way
it
that
is.
we do it now is seriously messed up.
100%. And nobody has ever thought to ask that question, sir. Nobody has ever said, why is it that we go through this whole vetting process? We have multiple debates, and they all rake each other over the coals. And
For the presidential nominee.
Absolutely. And then
$1 billion spent, right?
100%. And then nobody says a word about who they choose. They choose. That's such an elitist, anti-American idea.
Completely without any transparency, completely without any democratic representation.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's flip this on its head, and let's actually at least start the process where, hey, we've got whoever the presidential nominee is going to be and their pick, or we've got Mike over here that's been running a campaign for a couple years.
Well, that's absolutely true, and it brings up a host of related issues. Now, we talked about the fact that you don't always get the A team, right? To me, that's the least important of the issues. As important as that is, it's the least important. I would suggest there's two more important issues. One is the way that we do it is bad for our parties. It's bad for the Republican Party. It's bad for the Democratic Party too, but they're not asking my advice. It's actually worse for the Democratic Party than for the Republican Party, right? Nobody wants a situation where you pick Kamala Harris, for example, and then 3 years later, oops, that turned out to be really important. Maybe we should have paid more attention to it, right?
True.
And it's bad for the party in the sense that no matter whom you pick, you could pick the greatest candidate in the world. But a certain proportion of your party is going to resent it, is not going to like that person. It's just how it works.
Let me pause you right there, Mike. This is a great stop point. We got that hard break here, ladies and gentlemen. This is Caleb Collier with Church and State. Are you tired of your device spying on you? Ladies and gentlemen, we live in 1984. Your phones, your tablets, your smart televisions, they all are spying on you. And this is why I heavily endorse Mark37.com. This is everything you need for your digital privacy. Phones, tablets, laptops, all of them are ghost protocoled. So that means that you are in charge of your own data. Just go to churchandstate.media, scroll over to shop, and hit mark37.com for all of your privacy needs. Make sure to use that promo code Church and State. And we are back, and thank you for staying with us. You're over at churchandstate.media, and we're going to go right back to our guests. But real quick, let me push one of our awesome affiliates, and I am thinking Patriot Pouch. Look, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people are curious about the health benefits of nicotine. You keep seeing it in the news over and over and over again. And I've been honest with you as well. I use it. But some people are concerned with some of the health effects or side effects, like high blood pressure, elevated heart rate. There is an alternative, and it's found in Patriot Pouch. They use Nixidine instead of nicotine. It hits the same receptors in your brain without the elevated heart rate or blood pressure. So go check them out, Patriot Pouch. Owned by a Christian and a patriot. I like them. I've used their products. And use that promo code Church and State. You'll get a discount, and you'll help support our show. And speaking of support, hit the donate button for us one more time. Keep conversations like this going. This is an important subject. Obviously, you're not going to hear about a guy running for vice president just anywhere, but you can on Church and State. So hit the donate button. With that, let's go back to our guest. And Mike, I hate that hard break. I really do. But unfortunately, it's just part of doing this business. But I cut you off right as you were talking about how the process currently can anger a lot of people.
Thanks for. By the way, I enjoyed the scrolling in your promotion just there. I was trying to punch the interview for Ron Paul as it went by, but it scrolled too quickly for me to hit the button. So I'll have to do it.
Chris
later.
has got fast fingers. Yes.
Yeah, he's quick. I got to get faster. My point was that no matter whom you pick for VP, if you're the presidential nominee and you're going to pick unilaterally in an authoritarian fashion, whoever you pick, a certain proportion of your party is going to love the idea, a certain proportion of your party is going to not like the idea. And without a process to work through that, people just have to eat it, love it or shove it, and they go away hurt. That's no way to run a party. It's bad for your fundraising, it's bad for your grassroots support, and it's a bad look to the rest of the American people. So that's a big problem. And then the biggest problem of all we haven't gotten to yet, the biggest problem with the way that we choose VPs is that after the general election, one of these persons, either the Republican or the Democrat, is going to become VP. Best efforts of the Libertarian VP nominee notwithstanding, I hear there are some fine people who represent the Libertarian Party as VP nominees, but best efforts notwithstanding, it's going to be a Republican or a Democrat. Okay. Once they become VP, they immediately start behaving like mini-me. And you know what I mean by that, right? And there is some irony there in the sense that the vice president is the one guy or gal in the executive branch whom the president cannot fire, right? Who has his or her own political base, is the only other elected official. It's the one person you might expect to be able to show a little bit of independent thought. I don't mean you need to be a jerk about it and you need to drive the president crazy, but would it kill you to stand up for the Constitution once in a while, right? Would it kill you? Let me throw out an example. There are going to be a lot of people in your audience, I'm guessing, I could be wrong about this, but some people in your audience are probably big J.D. Vance fans. Okay, some people are, some people aren't. But let me speak to the J.D. Vance fans out there. Imagine how much more J.D. Vance you would get than you're getting today if the entire party were behind him rather than he feeling politically beholden to just one person. In fact, I would go so far as to say that we used to view Mr. Vance as being slightly more libertarian than we do today. I think that, we recognized him as being sort of an anti-war guy, sort of skeptical of big institutions, not fond of the concentration of authority and power. He used to say a lot of things that libertarians would thumbs up. And I don't want to pick on the vice president, but if you're a big J.D. Vance fan, I think you've got to say you missed some of that. And how much fun would it be if he felt like he owed the whole party, and he owed it for whatever reasons were at play when the whole party chose him? And the expectation set would be different. Today, if a vice president says anything that's not 100% in line with what the president says, it's got to rhyme, right? It's got to be on point. Otherwise, you have violated some weird expectation. But if the expectation were to your whole party, then you would feel like the expectation would be for you to say something once in a while that was representative of your party, responsive to your party's interests, responsive to the reasons your party picked you in the first place. And I, for one, would enjoy hearing Yale Law School graduate like Vance talk about the Fourth Amendment sometimes. Talk about the First Amendment sometimes. There have been plenty of opportunities that he's passed up, and I would like to see that. That's just one example.
Mike, I got to tell you, I love this example because, I wouldn't trust a married couple that was constantly saying exactly the same thing. I'd be worried that
like
the wife.
Stepford wives.
Yeah. I'd be worried about, is like their problem at home, or you like battered wife syndrome? That would be my concern there. And you're right. This example is perfect for that because J.D. Vance is his own person. He shouldn't be expected to agree with literally every single thing that Trump says. Now, I get the whole argument of a united front, but still, I think it'd be healthy, especially when we're applying it to the Constitution, to say, well, what about this? In my position of power as the vice president, what about what the Fourth Amendment says about, some of these privacy concerns that we have as we're partnering with Palantir, for example?
That's a big one, especially for Vance and Maine and Minneapolis and the way that ICE is going about its business. Vance would be the perfect guy to say, we all want to enforce our immigration laws. We're all about it. That's what the administration's thing is. But we believe that we need to be careful, too, to protect individual liberty. That's not a weird statement. That's not a statement that's going to sink the administration's boat. Right? That's something you would expect out of a liberty guy who went to a good law school and was, not yet 50 years, a young guy. I think a lot of Americans would be like, yeah, that makes sense. You can think about two things at once.
Well, you would hope so anyway. I don't know, in this current political climate. But regardless, you're bringing up some fantastic points that I hope the audience is really listening to. The idea that we can pick our vice president, that we don't have to be just told, as you said, in an authoritarian manner, that the vice president can be a voice of independent reason as he still is on board with the primary objectives and agenda of the administration, but can still add some clarity to an issue or be a voice of proper dissent. These are acceptable things to me and should be to the American public.
I would think so. There's another irony that comes up when, once in a while I get a little bit of pushback from some people. That comes as a great shock to you, I'm sure. And the places where I get pushback, they come from two different sources. One is, gee, we want presidential nominees to be able to pick whoever they want because we want to make sure that they're on the same page. The irony is that that's typically the opposite of what presidential nominees do, right? Barack Obama didn't pick Joe Biden because they had so much in common, right? They typically pick someone as different from themselves as possible so that they extend their political reach, right? John Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson hated each other's guts.
Yeah, they did.
That's why they were good for, as long as they didn't punch each other in the face, literally, they were having a good day. That was okay, right? If the party's delegates were to pick a VP, odds are they would be more similar than right? The Democratic the delegation is not picking Kamala Harris. I'm sorry if there's any Kamala Harris fans. You probably have a lot of Kamala Harris fans watching your show.
All the time. I get emails constantly, Mike, telling me how much they love Kamala Harris.
Yeah, don't pick on Kamala. You're being mean. You probably have a lot of fans. Okay, so I'm speaking to your audience now that's Kamala Harris fans. I'm sorry that it's just not true that the delegation would have picked her. I don't think I don't mean it's impossible. I just think it's unlikely, right? It's unlikely. They would have picked someone probably more like Joe Biden. Maybe that's a problem, but it's not true that delegates are idiots. It's not true. And that brings me to the second place where I get pushback. I've talked to a lot of delegates, and I would say 80 or 90% love this idea. And in fairness, the reason they love it is because I'm trying to empower them, right? Why wouldn't they love it, right?
Sure.
I mean, set aside principle and veracity. Just, I'm just trying to give them more power. Of course they like the idea, right? That's an easy sell. But the folks that don't like it, in the not a zero minority, the folks that don't like it because they don't trust delegates to vote. They just don't like the idea of them running off the rails, perhaps not being as politically savvy, not thinking as strategically. It's just a whole group. I met a bunch of folks in Indiana who were still upset about losing a similar vote regarding the lieutenant governor. You'll see the analogy here, right? In Indiana, they had a vote about who they wanted to be the nominee for lieutenant governor. And some people voted for candidate A and some people voted for candidate B, and candidate A got more votes and candidate B got fewer votes, and so it was candidate A and candidate B supporters were hurt. That's how it works, right? That's how, this isn't an interesting story, this is a boring story, because that's how it works. But what was interesting about it is that 2 years later, the people that lost are still upset. And a certain proportion of them told me that they just flat out didn't trust delegates to vote anymore because it didn't go their way. This is just straight up authoritarianism, right? This is just straight up democracy sucks because I don't always get my way kind of thinking, which I found fascinating. There are some people who would rather leave it to the presidential nominee just cause.
Just take choice completely off the table.
Right. I don't know how to argue against that. I mean, I have to at some point say, you're right. You would prefer that.
Yeah. Personally, I'll take choice. I'd rather at least go through the process. I'd rather play the game, right, than not take any action at all. And that's what these people are advocating for. Hey,
yeah, I'd rather lose the game than, not even get in the stadium.
Exactly, the case there. And so what I'm hearing is I think predominantly the people that would be opposed to this would be more of the establishment leadership. They don't like this idea because this is something they can't control. And obviously, as we see in politics, there's a lot of people that like to control things.
So I've heard that. So that's an issue.
Yeah, I would definitely say it is. There's a little bit of a camera issue there, but I think we just cleared it up there.
I saw that. I'm delayed. I don't know if it's because I'm moving so quickly that electrons can't keep up with me, or if I just have a crummy connection today. So I apologize.
It's probably the internet. It just had one little glitch, but you're back now. So, but we're winding down on the interview, and so I want to say a few things. Number one, I would encourage the audience to support my guest. I think this is a phenomenal idea, one that's never been tried before, but gives us more options as we continue forward, 250 years plus. It's a great idea. I want people to support you. We'll bring up your website in just a second here. I also want to say, though, if you do become vice president, I'm going to put my hat in the ring for your PR guy or something like that. I think it'd be fun to work for you.
That would be a lot of fun, and I would enjoy that too. But, we might just let democracy run amok. We may vote on that. We may have delegates vote on who's going to run PR, and we may have delegates vote on, who gets to work in the office. We may have delegates vote on what time everyone comes to work. I don't know. I mean, we could be going crazy with this.
Man, you're getting crazy with the freedom. You're gonna terrify some people. Me, I'm applauding it wholeheartedly. Let's bring up your website real quick here for those who are interested, who want to support you in this. It is Mike Maat, and I'm going to spell this MikeTermaat.com. And Chris has got that right up. But, sir, tell us about your website.
The website is fun. You can find out some stuff about the campaign. You can sign up for an email. I don't send emails very often, so don't be intimidated by that. You're not going to get it like every day or even every week. I get an email out a few times a year. So, don't expect we're going to become pen pals if you sign up there. You can also learn, we published a book earlier this year, a group of essays by very smart people, not me. And that was a lot of fun. You can learn about the Republic, that's the book, available on Amazon for something very cheap. You can learn about the Republican Liberty Caucus, which is a great organization. You can also go to rlc.org, but we make it easy there. You can learn about it right on our website. And that's a terrific organization. By the way, we're putting the Republican Liberty Caucus of Texas is putting together a very fun event to go on during the Republican National Convention in Dallas, September 9. I look forward to getting the details on that and sharing it with people as well. See, you can learn a lot of stuff on our website. It's thankfully not all about me.
Yeah, I like this website. I'm actually signing up to get your newsletter right now, so you can add me to the mailing list. I don't mind if we become pen pals, though. I'll read everything that you send me. But not only am I excited about this idea, I endorse it. The audience, church and state, Caleb Collier endorses Mike for vice president of the United States of America. I think this is one of the best ideas politically that I've ever heard.
Well, I appreciate that. It is a very fun idea, and there are so many ways to win, right? Because I would consider to win, obviously, if I become president of the United States, that might be setting the bar kind of high in terms of all or nothing and feeling like a failure, right? Think about all the ways there are to win. If we can get people to think differently about how we pick our vice presidents, that would be a big win. And Caleb, the other thing is, and I know that this is, really in your wheelhouse, we want someone from the Liberty Movement on the national ticket. We believe it would be good for the Republican Party. It would recognize that's the direction the party has to go in and is going. It would be good for American politics. It would be good for the Liberty Movement. It would be good for the American mainstream of political thought. And that is a huge objective of our campaign, is to raise awareness of the Liberty Movement.
Yeah, you hear it all the time politically, like, I'm for this, and you see, like little memes going out there. A big one I've seen lately is Massey Gabbard, and people are already saying, let's do that. I'm going to start posing the question, why don't we have people run for this office? This is a very important office. Why don't we have people run? I think it's a game changer
and
right
get
here.
Publicly vetted and make your case.
I agree. I think this is the best system that we could probably, I think it's one of the better systems we could use to actually change politics at that national level to make it better. And I'm actually thinking of starting a band called the Vice Presidents of the United States of America. I don't think anybody's ever done that before. I may be off,
No,
Chris.
probably not. But with Aaron Burr on drums, what could go wrong?
I absolutely love it. All right, sir. Well, I'll go ahead and let you go. I'm going to, if you would hold on one more minute post-production to say our goodbyes, I'd appreciate it. But thank you so much for joining us on Church and State.
Absolutely my pleasure. A joy to be with you.
Excellent. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. Candidate for Vice President of the United States of America. I tell you, I get the greatest guests, and this is absolutely phenomenal. I think you can tell I had a lot of fun during the interview, but this is a very serious issue, and I think we should get behind this man. Church and State is brought to you in part by Colonial Life Spokane Independent Agents, Finders Insurance, and Mark37.com. I'm Caleb Collier. I was born for a storm.
Welcome to the fire.
Hey, this is Caleb Collier with the Church and State Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I want all of you to go to Galileo.com. You need to stay connected no matter what comes our way. Whether it's government intrusion or a meteor falling from the sky, Galileo has you connected. As a Marine veteran, I can tell you that communications is essential. Galileo has you connected. Whether it's worldwide coverage, uncensored content, or real-time alerts, Galileo is going to make sure that you're connected with your friends, family, and neighbors. Just head on over to churchandstate.media, scroll over to shop, and hit Galileo.com. Make sure to ask them for a free bivvy stick, and make sure to use that promo code Church and State. Hey, this is Caleb Collier with Church and State, and I want to tell you about a great product, Liberty Cigars. I know for myself, there's nothing grander than sitting around a campfire, having a great theology discussion with a group of men while smoking a cigar. That's why I love Liberty Cigars. Every cigar has a story to tell. Not only are you going to be smoking the finest cigars on the market, but you're also going to get a history lesson with every single one of them. From George Washington to Thomas Jefferson, the heroes of the American Revolution, generals, presidents throughout history. I'm telling you, I absolutely love Liberty Cigars. I need you to go to libertycigars.com. Use that promo code Church and State. You'll get a discount, and you'll also be helping to support Church and State with everything that we do. Hey, this is Caleb Collier with Church and State. I'm here to tell you about Hunter's Blend Coffee. I got to tell you, I absolutely love this stuff. I'm all about the dark roast. Hunter's Blend Coffee, black powder. Doesn't that just sound like deliciousness and rebellion? I got to tell you, in America, we don't drink tea. No, we drink coffee. It's the food of the gods, and I endorse and support Hunter's Blend Coffee. Got to tell you, tastes like freedom. So I need you to go over to churchandstate.media, scroll to Hunter's Blend Coffee, and use the promo code Church and State to help support us. And when you go to huntersblendcoffee.com, not only will you be getting a great cup of coffee, but you also, if you use the promo code Church and State, be supporting Church and State and our dogged pursuit of truth.